welcome to the European Games Venture Capital Moment panel. We know you have a choice in panels, and we appreciate your patronage. 2 years ago, I gave a talk on the coming venture capital wave in Europe. And last year, I gave a follow-on talk where I pointed out that Europe was now the leader in the West in venture capital. But last year, it was because America, which has traditionally been the games venture capital of the world, had run away from the category. It was in a cyclical downturn. This year, as evidenced by these gentlemen on stage, it is because Europe is by far the most active territory in the West investing in games, and it is the moment for European game companies. I'm Eric Goldberg. I have the privilege of serving as an advisor to Casual Connect and recruiting people. I've been in the games business for 35 years. I've been at first as a game designer, then as the head of a game company, and more recently as an advisor and board member. I have a list of 3 exits, which are recent, which are from 300 million to 700 million, and I have a much longer list of companies that haven't gone anywhere. In any event, but let's talk about the people who are here to sort out. From my far right and your far left, we have Rob Moffat, who is from Balderton Capital, which started as Benchmark Capital Europe. They are Series A investors, and we will discuss the various stages later. They have 2 of their best-known investments are Wooga and Natural Motion. And Natural Motion, of course, sold for $670 million to Zynga a couple years ago. Next to him is Mack, the VP of Product Portfolio at London Venture Partners. Yes, he is based in Berlin, even though he's with London Venture Partners. They are the longest and most closely identified with games venture capital in Europe. They are seed and now more recently follow-on. Some of their better-known investments are Supercell, which of course has exited, Unity, and ones that are more recent are PlayRaven and FuturePlay. Next to him is Laurence, Garrett, who is the partner at Highland Capital Europe. Highland Capital Europe is the sister company to Highland Capital, which is one of the great Boston venture firms and one with a 30 to 40 year success record. They are growth stage, so they do later stage venture capital. Their companies include Wooga and Social Point, which exited last week for $250 million. And Rob now has bragging rights over all the other members on stage. Because he is British, he is going to be modest, at least for the first half hour. To give you an idea of what their U.S. sister firm does, is also in Scopely, which is one of the major players in mobile. Next to him is Romain Lavault, the general partner of Partech Ventures, which is a multi-stage firm. It will invest from seed, so as little as $100,000 to $40 million. Their notable investments include Wooga, again, so we have a couple of companies represented by several investors. Resolution Games, which is the VR firm in Sweden, which is headed by Tommy Palm, who some of you may know turned Candy Crush Saga into a modestly successful game in mobile. And they also have been an investor in RockU. And closest to me is Joaquin Rebuelta. Did I screw up the pronunciation? They are early stage, so Series A. They define Series A as 1 million to 2 million. One thing to understand is that the older the venture capital market is, the greater the amount that they consider for a Series A. His investments include Omnidrone and Winco, both of which he has done in concert with London Venture Partners. So in brief, we're going to cover the territory so you can get an overview and see what makes sense for you. So as the first question, we're going to look for what are the qualities for which VCs look in game portfolio companies. And Rob, can you start with specific reference to games?
So, good afternoon, everyone. What do we look for in games companies in 2017? And there's the obvious piece, which is a fantastic team. And we're a Series A investor, and we struggle with what the hell Series A investing means in games, because there's generally a seed round, and the better your team is, the bigger your seed round is. And if you're a really good team, your seed round is 10 million. And then there's growth funding after that. When you cracked user acquisition, you crack CPI LTV, and you're just about scaling up. And the sort of classic Series A we would normally do doesn't really exist. So I guess what we're looking for is this kind of possible sort of unicorn intersection of a company that has already developed a game that's maybe in soft launch, that has great KPIs, great retention, fantastic team, where we have the right belief that we think 5 million or 10 million will make a real difference to that game and help them grow very fast, and that they can throw fuel on the fire. I think the biggest thing I focus on when I talk to a games company these days is around distribution. So how are you going to work out distribution? We would not invest in a company that says our plan is to get our game published. Right? That's not what we do. We're trying to find companies that become very big. That doesn't happen if you're getting someone else to publish your games. So we're looking for someone who's got something interesting to say around distribution, and about how they're going to get their game really big. And then they've got to have the real sort of meat behind that of a great game and a great team and great live ops.
Rob, traditionally venture firms say they don't want to invest in titles, they want to invest in a company. So you've mentioned someone with one, you implied you were looking at a single title company. Are you basically looking for someone with just a single title if the metrics are okay?
I think the Series A investing like we do, it has to be a single title. Once a game company has multiple successful titles, then it's in Laurence's stage or beyond, or it's hugely cash generative already. I think what we do look for is, what are you about as a company? So for Wooga, right, they're 100% focused on casual mobile games. Natural Motion was very focused around the kind of the wow impact, fantastic quality 3D visuals and realistic movement. And I think that's kind of what gets game companies acquired, is the real focus and building a real set of unique skills in a particular area.
Okay. Let me switch to now what the sectors of interest are for the next 12 to 18 months. Marek, can you do the top hits, and then I'm going to ask Joaquin to follow up.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. We look at everything. We haven't set a list of stuff we don't look at. Apart from we haven't done any investment in VR. I think what we are looking for is just gradually changing over time as the industry is maturing. So I think my colleagues would probably deny this, but I believe that 4 or 5 years ago, if it was a small, decent team with some track record and basically pitching a game that sounded really good, I'm talking about my colleagues in my firm, they might do the investment. Then 2 years ago, they started to be aware of this LTV CPI issue. And today, I think we look at much more. And one of the new things now is, can this team fundraise beyond the money they get from us? So you gradually, as the industry...
I'm asking, can you do a couple of sectors? For example, you probably won't be invested in someone who's going into mid-core mobile because that category is so oversubscribed. So you could describe some sectors that you would particularly look at?
Yeah, we would look at more hardcore experiences. We would not look at casual, really. We're not really getting the economics there. So we would look at more mid-core. We would look at things that use new tools. We look at companies that are using spatial OS. We're starting to look at Steam, early access, and things like this. We're broadening the horizon a little bit, and at the same time increasing sort of what we need to see in the team to be present, or that there's a viable plan for them to get all this competence into the team quite quickly.
Okay, Joaquin, now from a very different part of Europe, Iberia, and also with a series of investments in a couple. And what sectors are you looking at?
I would say that from our point, we look at everything made by Spanish entrepreneurs because our fund is based in Madrid and we have our angle on our best deal flows from there. But within that frame, I think that we would look at anything within mobile. What I would agree with her is that things have changed a bit in the last years. And now it's more difficult to fund a team that have some experience and they just want to start a new studio. And we would have like a more look into the metrics, and we will look more on growth. We will get more risk on the growth than on the product. That's something different that has happened in the last 2 years.
Okay, but in Madrid, how many experienced games teams are there?
Not many. I mean, maybe we can. I I think that the figure is like in Spain there is like 450 gaming companies.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So that's something similar to I think it's Italy and France, I think, and the big place was UK. I saw some figures yesterday about it.
Okay, well, it seems that there's an arbitrage opportunity for all of you experienced game companies move to Madrid. They're definitely looking for people like you, and rather than compete in London and Berlin against many, many more people over there.
And the weather is a bit better than here.
All right. Next, let's discuss the concepts of the various stages: the seed stage, earlier stage, Series A and B, and growth venture capital. Romain, you cover the entire spectrum. Obviously, can you describe what Series A is for a more, an older territory, rather than, Joaquin is given the 1 to 2 million for Madrid, which is a relatively young venture capital sector. But just give an overview so people will know where they fit in.
Hi, everyone. So, just to have a common understanding on what we mean by seed, Series A, or growth stages. So typically a seed round, the size of the round is anywhere between 1 million to 8 or 9 million max for the best teams. And seed means that you haven't launched your product yet, or you have very, very early traction. Series A, you usually have launched your game, your title, you have at least one, and you can show either very promising traction in terms of engagement, or very promising monetization. And there's more basis to build a serious business plan. Business plan at the seed stage doesn't mean anything. It's more, how long can you last until your money runs out? In Series A, we can start thinking about the mechanics of building a profitable business. In growth stages, when we're ready to write a check of $20, $30, $40 million in a round that can be $50 to $100 million, then of course it's about two things. It's about profitability and about the exit. Because in this case, we're looking at a company that will exit either through M&A or IPO in the next 18 to 24 months. So the question is, who is going to buy this company? Or what will be the perspective of the market if it goes public? And so these are very different filters that we apply to the different stages. So I hope it sets the stage for the understanding.
Okay. Laurence, since you are a growth stage company, can you describe what you think, can you elaborate on what Romain said? And also, can you give us a sense of how many more growth stage companies you think what the population of growth stage companies are in Europe? In other words, is there a good crop of games companies out there coming?
Sure. We define growth really not by the amount of money that's gone into the company already, whether it's had seed or Series A, but by the stage of the actual financials of the company. The thing I love about the games industry is it's so data-driven. So a growth stage investment for us would mean that the company's probably got north of 10 million in sales run rate. It's probably growing at a faster clip than 50%. It's probably got a back end where the analytics about what it's doing in lifetime value, cost per install, customer acquisition costs are really well defined. The CMO knows exactly which channels he's using. The board is pretty defined and knows where directionally it's going. Our average life of an investment at a growth stage is actually 7 years. So, it's nice to think that we know where the exit is, but in truth, our average life of a growth investment is 7 years. So, Social Point was quick for us. It was 2.5 years. Wooga, when we made that investment, I think is about 5 years ago now. That's how we would define growth. And we're typically writing anything from $10 million upwards. And a third of what we do is equity release for early investors and management. So literally putting cash in people's pockets. A third of what we do is acquisition finance. And a third of what we do is funding working capital needs, losses effectively. If you talk about the growth stage company, I think the games industry is going to still bubble up some fantastic opportunities, even in the mobile sector in Europe. I would say we would see about a rate in the games industry of about 2 every 6 months to hit our criteria.
That's pan-European.
Pan-European, yeah.
Okay. So can you, do you recall what Social Point's run rate was at the time that you invested? What was their annual run rate at the time you invested in them?
Yeah, we first saw Social Point in 2011. It was too early for us. We saw him in 2014. We were able to look at what they predicted in 2011. I kid you not, they'd hit every number, both at the top line and bottom line. And that was actually our diligence done. We were pretty impressed with that. They'd hit it slightly differently. Different titles had made, but they'd actually hit the overall top line numbers. The run rate was about $30 million, and it was profitable. The business was profitable. The majority of our investment was secondary, actually going to early stage investors and a little bit to the management team. The business didn't need any working capital.
And then lastly, you mentioned the concept of a CMO. By the way, CMO is a bit of a foreign concept to most game companies that are not absolutely huge. Chief Marketing Officer. Yeah. Are you willing to settle for a head of UA?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Then moving to the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about how game companies that are at the seed stage could be assisted by companies. LVP is unusual in that it supports Playhubs, which is a co-working space where you've recruited one of the most successful British entrepreneurs in Chris Lee, and of course, you come out of a game company, having worked in game companies in both Europe and Japan, and are here to basically help assist. Kids, you can describe what sort of material assistance a VC might be able to give on the business side.
Yeah, so I think we offer a lot of the same stuff that the other guys on the stage would offer when it comes to introductions and helping with focus and things like this. But I think where we differ maybe a little bit is like Eric was saying, my background is from building game studios. I've only been on this side of the table, so to speak, for about a month. So I built 3 game studios. I've overseen 9 game studios. I've worked for large structures like EA and so on. And in the company, all the guys have gaming backgrounds. One of my bosses founded Criterion. Another one built up the distribution for EA in Europe, headed up all the studios, and then was the CEO of Atari. So what we try to do is to offer deeper advice and more operational advice than what the other VCs can do. So I spend a lot of my time going deeply into product, helping to prioritize roadmaps, helping with monetization structures, helping with focus, helping to drive various dynamics in the team and give advice at a very deep level. Of course, only when the team wants it, I will offer all this advice, and if they take it, we get traction, then I keep doing more. If they don't want it, I'll back off. But we try to build value that way. So we go very, very deeply in, depending on what the company is open for and wants to take on board. I find a lot of the work I do is related to taking kind of an early game success and try to make the operation a little bit more commercial. So my experience from Japan is that it's not a problem to find producers who really understand both the creative side and the free-to-play side. There isn't any mismatch there, but in Europe there tends to be different people who understand those two things. So you sort of need to bridge that divide, and that's a bit of a pity. A good creative producer in Japan has an instinctive feel for his audience and his spenders, and he will pitch you a game idea, and within 5 minutes he will tell you what the dark of the concept will be. For a Western game producer, that feels like something a different team should be working on. So a lot of the work I do is related to helping them with models I built for how to forecast revenue on a daily basis, so you can really drive it to see if you understand your audience. A lot of different things around what I would think of as kind of commercializing the operation a little bit.
So how much assistance will you offer? So a company comes to you, you're not yet sure whether you're going to invest in them. How much assistance will you give them before you're certain that you're ever going to invest in them, or you may not actually do so?
Yeah, so I would of course not go into the level that I just described now, but what we try to do is to be a positive force in the ecosystem. So we've been where these companies are, we've started gaming companies, and it's to our own benefit that the industry is good. So we try to do our best to really give feedback. And I have to say, I was really amazed in the first 2 months. I started with them a little bit back in November, and I kept reading their emails and what they send to the companies that we turned down. And I was really, really impressed. David Gardner, one of the general partners, he sends these awesome emails that are so true. And it's really direct feedback. It's really not holding back. It's really telling you, like, you should focus on these areas. You should try to improve these areas. And I think that's what we try to do. And I try to copy that style, and I try to spend as much time as I can to give detailed feedback. When I say I don't believe in the progression in your game, why? What does it mean? I try to give you something that you can hook on to. It's extremely time-consuming, and of course, many companies then take my no with that feedback as a no, but if you can fix this, I'm interested. So, you know, it's a strange dynamic that I probably need to learn, but it's something that I would like to continue to do. I started out calling everyone. I felt I should do it face to face or you know, directly with my voice. It takes too much time, so I reverted to email. But yeah, we try to give as much feedback as we can on what do we see in your case, what do we like, what do we not like, what do we think about your game, what should you look at, what would be necessary for you to secure funding. And a lot of it is also related to advising about what funding should you be seeking. Because I would say 1/3 of the deals we've looked at since I joined have been deals that should not seek VC funding. A lot of game companies think that the difference between an angel and a VC is just the check size. They don't understand the expectations and the growth model that comes with VC money.
So I would like to thank Ari, and then Rob will go to you. I would like to thank Ari because he is now this is one of the biggest issues VCs have. If they say no and they are in the business of taking risks, so that means that they will be wrong, they have to figure out a nice way to say no in case it turns out they were wrong and you're a huge hit and they want to get into a later stage. But Ari has now committed that he will come up with at least one useful thing for each one of you people who pursue him and fill up his email inbox. So all of you, just... he's done it. The witnesses on stage. Rob?
Yeah, I was just going to add one piece on sort of VCs trying to add value to games companies. And I think it's tempting to see games as a completely different animal to any other kind of venture-backed company. And I think there's certain areas where that's completely true. But you look at, I think, the areas where we would get most involved in a games company. One would be around financing, funding, financial planning. That is a lot of commonalities. Second piece around hiring and retaining great people, and that's where we spent a lot of time with Wooga. And the third piece is that marketing. I mean, we took all of our CMOs off to Facebook and Google last week, and 2/3 of them now are thinking about app install ads, and they're trying to think of creative ways to get app install ads, and yeah, sort of helping sort of see beyond, in the way that sort of seriously games have done, sort of see beyond the obvious kind of ad networks and CPI, very quantitative games marketing, to look for more creative ways with YouTube influencers, with live videos. I think there's a lot of kind of learnings across from other sectors that's worth kind of surfacing up and taking a look at.
So let's talk about Natural Motion. They have extraordinary technology chops and started as a technology company, but they also have had issues learning how to monetize games. And this is not, this has obviously been proven pre-acquisition and post-acquisition. What assistance were you able to give them as Torsten and company drove for the exit that was with Zynga?
So I think, Natural Motion made lots of money out of CSR racing, and they're making lots of money out of CSR racing too. But it's probably fair to say that not so much money out of Clumsy Ninja. But Clumsy Ninja was what got them acquired. So I think that, I know it wasn't it was one of my former partners, Mark Evans, who spent a lot of time with them. Probably the most important thing he did was to get Mitch Lasky from Benchmark to invest, and getting them that kind of West Coast royalty investment suddenly, and the CEO moving out to the West Coast, playing guitar with the head of Apple's App Store. That's the kind of thing that kind of gets those connections that get you noticed by people and building those relationships. And I think that was a real focus. Obviously, they had to deliver great games and make impressive revenues, which they did, but also getting that really strong group of relationships with other people in the industry.
That actually is, again, that reinforces the point very nicely about the assistants. Mitch Lasky, for those of you who don't know, was the global executive in charge of Activision's games, and then he was the CEO of Jamdat, and after his EA, he sold the EVP of products. So he probably has the most games experience of any venture capitalist. But the ability to pull in the assistance with the App Store is exactly the sort of stuff that you should be looking for in a venture capital firm to provide. Let's move on to the next topic, which is we Americans sometimes think that Europe is rather similar, and we notice that there's this different language thing, but there's also these different cultures. So we have Europe started with their games venture capital in the UK, and then in France. Partech has had investments going back to the 1990s in games, and then we've seen the rise of Scandinavia, starting with Finland, which had a magnificent games ecosystem built around Supercell, and more recently Spain. So can you talk about about how you build a games ecosystem from nothing, and what hope there is for the sectors that do not yet have several VCs investing? Joaquin?
Yeah, I think that for a gaming company to be built, you need before to build the ecosystem. It's not a one hit only, because you need a combination of things. Of course, talent. You need people that wants to be there, good high education. You need money, legal protection. There is a set of things that are really required. And after that, I think that it's just time for people to let them do things, and if they have funds behind them, they have money. It's something that sooner or later will happen. Now, in the case of Spain, it has maybe it's the ecosystem that it's far behind the rest of Europe, in not only in gaming but in all the verticals. But I think that things have been catching up in recent years, and things like Social Point shows that anywhere it can be made if you mix all the ingredients that are required. No?
Okay. Romain, I'm going to ask about France, which notoriously has had regulations that make it hard for startups to employ people. So you could, of course, tell me that Partech invests anywhere but France, but I'm hoping that's not the answer you'll give us. Can you talk about how you navigate regulations that make it difficult to get rid of employees, difficult to hire people for a cash-starved startup?
Yeah, so it has improved a lot in France. A third of our portfolio is in France, even though we invest in 12 countries. So I don't think it is too much of a difficulty. It's actually super easy to start a startup in Paris now.
Good.
There are some constraints, but most entrepreneurs go around that. I think this is not the least of the difficulties. What is interesting in terms of when we compare the growth path of the different startups and the different ecosystems, there's one downside of being in France is that you get a lot of government grants, and it's the same in Sweden, etc. And government grants are nice because it adds to your cash runway, but it doesn't give you a sense of urgency. So it feels like you're going from 12 months of cash to 24 months of cash, and the problem is if you reach the same result in 24 months and in 12 months, you're not going to get funded in Series A because you don't have the momentum. So keeping a level of urgency because you know you're running on tight cash can somewhat be an asset. The other thing is, I think it's a chance that we don't have a unique market in Europe, because what I've seen is that it forces great entrepreneurs to think global from the get-go. There's no such thing as a French market or a Swedish market or a German market. It's too small, and especially in the game industry, people that are designing their launch, they launch it from San Francisco and Seoul, but they don't launch it from Stockholm, Berlin, or Paris. So I think that's a chance to start from Europe, and probably the reason why there's so much investment across the pond now.
Yes, in fact, some of the great companies have come out of Finland because they say we have to sell for something other than our market because there are only 4.5–5 million people and perhaps 1 million reindeer, and that does not make a market. Israel is very similar, Sweden, Denmark, and so on and so forth. So in terms of navigating, you mentioned that the French market has now become more entrepreneur friendly and so on. So do you give people, what sort of assistance do you give to them in terms of handling a global market? Because they have to go across their borders.
We actually make it a selection bias. We want to fund entrepreneurs that are fluent in English, they have international experience, and they're designing their experience for international audience. After that, we help them through, specifically in our case, we have multiple locations in the US, in Germany, now in Africa. We have a Korean partner in the team. So we're really actively connecting them to ecosystems. We've seen an interesting thing is that I've seen a lot of similarities between the gaming business and the consumer electronics business. And so because we're also multi-stage, we're federating discussions between entrepreneurs of different sectors so that they can exchange tips. And we've seen quite frequently PR firms that were in consumer electronics helping out for the launch of a game, recruitment firms, even data scientists going one from the other. And I found that in terms of being an investor in both sectors, it's pretty similar. It's the same leap of faith. And we see a lot of consumer electronics entrepreneurs in France, and that are following the exact same path that the gaming industry has followed 5-10 years ago in France.
Thank you. Let's move on to the other side of the picture, which is M&A and exits. So at last year's Casual Connect, Paul Gardner of Osborne Clark, who also represent Natural Motion in the transaction, predicted that there would be a wave of M&A from Asian companies in games companies. And there was, but it was not from the sources we expected. There was a chicken farming company that bought into Jagex. It's almost like a child's quiz. There was a chemicals company, a coal mining company, let's just say insurance companies. As we all know, insurance executives are perfectly placed to help build your games company. But it was basically a lot of hot money leaving Asia where they could get a higher valuation. But we did see a wave of acquisition. So, Laurence, you win the toss because A, you've had the most recent exit, and B, that's what your business is about. Can you talk about the M&A and exits landscape for the next 12 to 18 months, including whether other chicken farmers are stepping up to the plate?
Yeah, I mean, look, my experience is the Chinese are, as an acquiring group, very active. They're keen. It doesn't matter what the sector is, to be candid. But what they're fundamentally keen on is profitability, and that is what they fundamentally are looking for. So, and that's a straight arbitrage. I don't know how long it lasts, but the chemical company in China has probably got a market cap of several billion. It's probably trading at 25 times PE, and it can buy a games business for 10 times. It straight away makes 2.5x on its market cap just by doing that on the purchase price it pays. And that arbitrage is not going to last forever, and it's definitely taking place at the moment. Jagex is a fine example of it. It's a profitable business. It's not the greatest title in terms of currency, but it's got a big user base, and it's very mature and predictable, and the Chinese love that. I think if you look forward, they're going to continue to do that despite the regulation that's coming through from the Chinese authorities. When we looked at Social Point, it takes time to sell a company. So we started the activity in December 2015, should I say. So December 2015, we started the activity. We had an approach from an American business that subsequently went on to acquire another company, well known to you all. And we thought, the founders thought this was a good time to look at the M&A market from an exit perspective. We explored China, received offers, had a close approach in the summer of 2016, rejected that actually, decided it wasn't right, felt there was more value in the business. We didn't even go to America. Not until September 2016 did we approach American vendors or buyers, should I say. We approached American vendors in 2016 and concluded with Take-Two, who were looking for, mobile extension. But the profitability of Social Point was fundamental to the transaction. So I think if you are a title, or if you're in the developer community and you're a studio, I think profitability is going to be key in the next 12 months, 18 months. If you're in sort of a fundamental technology business, then I think you can probably get away with, for example, I'd love to meet a company that could automate balancing of a game. Just automate it. I still don't quite understand why that can't be fully automated. Why we can't figure out how it's a straight maths problem, isn't it? On a balancing question, how we can't figure out how we automate it. That would be quite interesting to see. Must have machine learning, AI capability in there. If you came out with that as a solution, I guarantee you don't have to be profitable to sell it. You're going to find a number of buyers who would be interested in acquiring that technology. There might be those opportunities out there, but for studios, I think its profitability is fundamental.
Right. Actually, Rob, Laurence, if you realize that we find this when they can do balancing, they can also do it so you don't need players because they'll do fine AI. Of course, that might run the whole getting the money thing out of the process. Rob, you discussed earlier, you mentioned one of your secret weapons with natural motion was you recruited Mitch Lasky and Benchmark, who had a prior relationship with Don Matrick, then the head of Zynga. But going forward for the next 12 to 18 months, what does the scene look like in terms of where natural exits will occur for European companies?
I think it's hard to add to what Laurence said. I think profitability is key. I think the acquisitions purely for a technology play or for the sizzle factor. Maybe you'll see one or two, but it's hard to see where that comes from. And what I to some extent RockQ are doing, but there's definitely a roll-up opportunity and if I was a non-VC, if I was a private equity investor, I would be going up and raising $2 billion to go and do a games company roll-up across Europe. And it sort of amazes me no one's doing that yet. So that's sort of what I'm so interested to see what happens.
William Latour from ID Invest, who was at ID Invest, that's exactly what he's looking to do. And he's done a lot of games, which is just raise a big fund and roll them up.
Let's go to one of the most sharply polarizing intersections with games, which is VR. So we have Romain, you're invested obviously in Tommy Palm's company, which is a VR play. We went from, as Jürgen Goldberg has pointed out, over 300 investments in VR. It's certainly the most invested consumer field, and maybe the actually consumer in other areas. And then we've hit the trough of disillusionment, where all of a sudden people realize that VR has not yet figured out a monetization strategy. So obviously you made an investment in there. What are you looking for? What are you looking forward in VR going forward for the next 12 to 18 months or perhaps 24?
So yeah, when we invested in VR and specifically selected to back Tommy Palm, it was part also of our own learning curve. And say if we are going to go into VR and make that risk because we don't know about the timing, let's partner with the best team out there. And they recognized they did not have any experience in VR as well, but they would learn very quickly and attract the best people in their ecosystem, which they did. Now, let's be honest, it's still about money. It's still about hardware today. So most of the revenue, most of the funding is still going into hardware. There are predictions that say that in 3 years, software, so mainly licenses, revenue will catch up and will be on par with hardware revenue. But we don't know. And yes, it's taking a bit longer than we all thought in terms of penetration. So 5 million Gear VR headsets, and now Daydream is on the market. So, by the way, I'm a big believer in mobile VR over desktop VR. That's just because we know that when we compare the growth of mobile gaming, mobile is for everyone. The question is mobile VR for everyone? And I'm not sure that all of us would wear headsets in the subway or at work or at home. So that's a big question. Which brings me to AR. And maybe AR will be the key to unlocking the user experience that works. I think there are rumors about Apple going into the AR business this year, and I think we'll be surprised. So for us, it's a bet. We haven't made a lot of investment in VR, probably 3 or 4 maximum. This is typically the seed stage investment where you don't care about monetization, you care about building a learning curve and building technology. And there are 2 ways. Either you'll sell the technology because you're more advanced than the rest of the market, or you can build a profitable business. I can add one comment. For example, one of the first resolution games, which is a fishing game called Bait, So they just announced their download numbers. It was 1 million downloads, which is super small for any game, but it's 20% market share in VR, so it's super large. I mean, there's no secret that they're not reaching profitability with just that. So the question is, how long will it take from 5 million headsets on the market to 500 million or more? And we don't know that. But that makes it the beauty of a business. We can handle it.
For what it's worth, a fishing game was the first in mobile 1.0. It was the bestseller in Japan when they learned to monetize, and it was a third bestseller in the US. One other thing about AR, VR has no mass market adoption. AR does. Google Maps is used all throughout the world and is an AR thing, and it is probably not a complete coincidence that the pseudo-AR hit of this summer, Pokemon Go, was done by Niantic, which comes out of the Google Earth team. They built that technology and they acquired it. So AR, there are obviously huge opportunities, and there's a stealth one out there. Ari, you said that you are not investing in VR. Are you saying because you just don't believe it's ever going to work, or just because you're not seeing the opportunities yet? Give us a brief description why.
Yeah, briefly, we're looking at it and we just don't see the opportunity yet. The adoption just isn't there. It just doesn't look like early adoption to me. Early adoption would be much steeper. So yeah, it's not. We don't feel that it's necessary to say what we personally think about it absolutely long term. We just think there's no urgency for us to get in there at the moment. So we're probably not going to do it for now, at least.
Well, since you are a long-term investor, as a seed investor, I very much hope for Romain's sake that you are incorrect in your analysis of the market. All right, we're going to turn this over to questions from the audience. By the way, I've observed to the panelists that European audiences tend to ask far fewer questions than Americans. So the panelists up here have offered that the best question from the audience will receive 100,000 from Romain. That was the other 4 panelists who made that offer. But anyway, any questions from the audience? And please let us know if you're directing it to a particular panelist.
Are you just investing in games, or are you also investing in software for games? I mean, like engines, like applications to help out engines, stuff like that. Okay.
Yes to both. So when we invested in Naturalmotion was a games engine company. We're invested in Sketchfab, who do 3D representations, also use a lot in VR. So in that sector, it's just about size. So how big can you be? Can you Unity and Unreal are 2 very small examples. There's not many examples of companies that have got really big, billion-dollar scale, just through being a games tool.
It's actually about 1 point. We just founded a sample library development company. It's more like the audio business, and my partner is just from the audio business, and I'm working with a game company for them in-house as a composer and also making business development for them. They are exclusively developing in virtual reality, and they are making their money. By the way, everyone who's making VR, by the way, make VR for exhibitions for the normal industry. All the companies out there want stuff for their exhibitions, like pharma companies. Okay. Is there a certain point where you say, okay, an idea for software development or a certain stage in software development should be done, where we invest or where we not invest? Is there need to be a finished prototype, or should be the product completely ready?
No, so we also invest in everything in the game ecosystem. So we were investors, like I said earlier, in Unity, and we were in the ad networks and so on. So we invest in the whole ecosystem. And to answer your specific question at the end, there isn't. For us, there isn't. It has to be early enough. If you have already got investment from lots of people, and you have lots of people in your cap table as owners, we probably are going to be a bit concerned because that creates problems. If you have already raised money so that your valuation is too high, then you're no longer seed for us. But in terms of earlier stage than that, there isn't an too early. It could be you with an idea. It would be an extreme case, but we have done investments like that in the past.
By the way, thank you for asking the question about picks and shovels. That is to say, things that surround the game section, because in trying to do a complete survey, we didn't cover that. So thank you for bringing that up. Next question. The gentleman over here.
Hello. Hi. So speaking to a lot of VCs, there seems to be the perception that despite it being a small market, there is potential in VR right now as far as making money goes. But I'm curious as to what you think regarding AR, because what I'm hearing is a lot of people talk about, HoloLens has a narrow field of view, Magic Leap, they're having a lot of trouble. Not necessarily when you would jump in for an investment, but where you see opportunities arising in which sectors for AR in the sort of near future, the next 1 to 2 years.
So in AR, there are two extremes. There is Pokemon on one end, and there are all of the HoloLens titles that they're start releasing, but it's still not there yet. And it's not consumer ready. It is professional ready, but it's going to be a long time like VR before we have headsets. There are headsets or glasses for everyone. My personal belief is that Apple is more working towards the Pokemon type of things. I'm an advocate of a transparent iPhone personally, but we'll see if that happens. So clearly AR is behind VR in terms of the learning curve, so it's still even earlier. Now, what is interesting, and a year ago we didn't have Pokemon to look at, what just happened is that we see that sometimes with existing technology you can create stuff. And so we're also looking at this across our investments, is that people that can take existing pieces of hardware, software, AI, whatever, and build new experiences. And so that is probably the very short-term future of AR, and we'll be surprised.
I think just one investment we've made, it has AR elements. There's a company called Touch Surgery, and they help teach surgeons how to do surgery and help them do walkthroughs of the surgery. And they're working now on AR approaches to that. And I think these other kind of professional use cases, people who need both their hands but would really benefit from a sort of 3D overlay on top, those kind of areas are super interesting.
So one other area where VR has discovered a serious problem, which is there are social issues. For instance, currently the full high-end gear is very socially isolating, and AR is not. And that is one of the reasons why VR requires your full attention, and it is a problem that is solvable. But for instance, obviously the ultimate version we've all seen on Star Trek is the holodeck, but it has not yet been solved at this early stage. So AR has some running room because it doesn't have quite that problem. There are problems with AR. Nokia did some great studies on this back in 2008 to 2011 that showed that someone using a mobile AR headset was the equivalent of someone who had drunk a bottle of vodka when navigating the streets. So there are, I'm not saying that there aren't also problems with AR, but at least you have some attention left to interact with other users. Well, I think we have time for one last question. Does anyone have a quick question?
Hello, my name is Mateusz Kostlevi from Lipa Learning. My question is related to the what should the game development companies from Europe have already ready for you to be interested for you? And the second question is, because being from the Czech Republic, is it important?
One question.
One minor little question. Is it important for you where the company is from regionally? Because me being from Prague, Czech Republic, is your venture capital funds focused only on the Western Europe, or you don't care?
Don't care.
Yeah, no, the geography one's very easy. We don't really care. We invest anywhere, really. And I suppose if you're looking at the company, it does vary from investor to investor because of the stage. We touched on that earlier. So, yeah, you've got to choose your investor wisely, target them appropriately, because you live with them for a long time.
Okay, but VCs, of course, like money wherever it comes from. So that part we get. But VCs also famously, particularly let me pick on Silicon Valley. They like investments that are great within 50 miles of Sand Hill Road. How many of you have investments in Eastern Europe? Raise your hand. You're not sure. Do you know where Eastern Europe is?
Yeah, I know where Eastern Europe is. Look, I would say 50% of our companies actually have got Eastern European presence. And I mean people on the ground, offices, dev teams. And unlike Silicon Valley, because you're absolutely right with that quote, in Europe you can't do that. You just can't do that. You have to travel in Europe. you just have to. So it's the only way. There's no concentration. If we were going to have a Silicon Valley, I'd pick Barcelona. Because it's got everything going for it in terms of the weather, the food, the fantastic sports team, and great people, truly international. Different cultures. I pick Barcelona, but that's not going to happen in the near term, unfortunately.
So I'll start a rumor that you're moving to Barcelona because they're in Madrid, and you can take the geographic advantage. All right, thank you very much to Rob, to Ara, to Laurence, to Romain, and to Joaquin for coming. Thank you all for coming. I hope you will stay to hear how the companies that they funded get sold and invested in by corporate developers. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.